Thank you, Kim, and welcome everyone. We're going to be having a very cozy social program tonight. And if you do have a show and tell, I would ask that you put your name and your topic in the chat. And this is our agenda. Hope you've got a hot drink or a drink, hot apple cider maybe. I've got mine. Maybe a cookie or two, because unfortunately it's hard to transmit them through the ethernets. And sit back and enjoy. We've got several people who have sent me some pictures, and I'll just do a few announcements and then we'll get into the main part of the presentation. But don't hesitate if you've got an idea to put it in the chat, and we will be watching for it, and we'll get you at the end of the ones that I have slides for. So just quickly, if you haven't heard before, the Grow Our Family is back. And if you are toying with the idea of becoming a member of Ontario Ancestors, and you haven't been for the last 2 years, I can supply you with a sponsoring current renewing member, and you have until December 15th. And then you both get 50% off. So that ends up being a $31.50 savings for each. And there are many member perks. And I put my usual plug in for helpers if anyone is interested in becoming part of our team. These are the ones that are kind of going begging at the moment. They're all non-elected, and give me a shout at that email address if you are interested. And just in the last week, Roots Tech Connect has opened their registration. And so it's going to be March 3rd to 5th in 2022, fully virtual and fully free. They had over 1 million visitors last year, and it was wonderful. So here's where you go and sign up, rootstech.org, and I hope to see you there as well. Now, normally I tell you about the next OGS webinar. It's Thursday, January 6th at 7 p.m. And we got to keep our eye on the e-weeklies because we don't know who's doing it yet. And Giving Tuesday was a week ago, but of course, if you are enjoying our speakers and feel like sending us a donation, go to our main page at Durham at ogs.on.ca, and there is a button on the left-hand side that will take you to a Canada Helps page, and you get an immediate tax receipt by return email. So it's great. So our main presentation, show and tell. Again, if you have a show and tell, put your name and topic in the chat window. 2 to 5 minutes only, just brief. And I'm going to start with Anne DeLong. And I would ask her to unmute her mic and maybe even show us her camera, her picture, and I'll let her talk now.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is one of 2 drawings that my great-grandfather gave to my grandfather, and then he gave them to my father. And they were drawn by these 2 drawings were drawn by my great-grandfather. And here's the second one. Yes. He was a stationary engineer in the shipyards at Cardiff in Wales. And so when I inherited these pictures, I became curious about the train and the plane, or I'm sorry, ship, just because I knew that that he was interested in them because they had, of course, steam boilers in them, and that was his thing. So Nancy, could you go to the next one? Okay, so because the ship and the train were both identified in small letters in the corner, I was able to find more information about that this train engine in this book by J.R. Howden. He made all kinds of books for boys back, I guess this one was published, I think, in about 1910. So it was a long time ago. But one of the things you might notice is that the picture of the train looks very similar to the one that my great grandfather drew. And the only thing that's different is the background. And so I wondered if maybe whether he had drawn it from seeing it at the shipyard, or whether he had actually had this book and drawn it from the illustration in the book, as sometimes people do if they're trying to practice their pencil drawing and things like that. And that led me to go and look up the author, and I found that he had another book that was called The Boy's Book of Steamships. And I wondered if maybe that steamship would be in the book. So I did a little investigation, and I found out that it couldn't have been, because it was published 2 years before the ship was launched. So, but at any rate, I found out a little bit about the ship, and the year that these were likely drawn, because of the ages of the things. And my family all left Cardiff in about 1910. And so these books would have been new, and I still don't really know if that picture came from the book, like was drawn from the one in the book or not, but it made me be interested in the books and in the ship. And so I decided to find out more about the ship, which was labeled as the Berbice, and I found that it was a Royal Mail ship originally, and then it had several other duties before it sank, and it had several different names, and it was called the Baltara by 1929. And it led me to this website called WreckSite, and it has a lot of information about ships. So if you ever have need any information about a ship that perhaps your ancestor has been on, or had either worked on or sailed on or something, this is a good site to go to, because a lot of these ships did eventually sink for one reason or another. Nancy, could you go to the next slide? Okay, and as you go down the page, it has information about all of the names the ship may have had, and owners that it might have had as you went along. And one more, Nancy. And then it's got a little history of the ship at the bottom, and it has a reference where you can see there where you can find out more about it. So I started out trying to find out more about my ancestor, but I ended up finding some other stuff instead, but I found it very interesting. And so I guess I probably will never know where he got the inspiration to draw that ship, because I've seen a number of pictures of the ship on the internet, and none of them are from that perspective. So it looks like a difficult drawing to do while the ship is just sailing away. So I may never know. But
would he have been likely to have taken a picture and done it off a picture?
Well, I suppose, but it was around 1910. Not everybody had cameras in those days, but there might have been a picture, maybe in the shipping office or something.
I think my grandmother had one of those Kodak cameras that early, when she would have been about 20 in 1910. It'd be around that time they came out with the popular camera.
So it's possible, but you could see from the pictures that he was a meticulous sort of draftsman rather than an artist.
Yeah.
And I suppose that would have been part of his work as a person who was working with ship designs and things like that. So anyway,
Okay.
that's all.
Thank you very much, Anne. And, you know, between everybody, I'm just going to pause for a little bit and see if anything comes up in the chat that anybody has a question for you. So, oh, thank you, Kim, for putting in the URL. And now Sharon is asking what ships and where. I'm assuming she's talking about the URL. Did you do a lot of looking around in the website, Anne?
Oh, well, there are many ships, but they're all ones that have sunk. You know, so not ones that were disassembled in shipyards. So it's wrecksite.eu because it's the European site. But they're all around various. They're not very all in one area. For instance, this particular ship started out in the West Indies. So.
Oh, okay.
So it could be. I think it's probably set up by people who like to dive on shipwrecks.
Well, that could very well be.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Anne.
I just found it very interesting because it had all the history of the ships with all the dates and everything. So if you're thinking your ancestor might have come on a certain ship and you found it wasn't in service at that date, then you know not to worry about it.
That's right. That's cool. I wonder if Lloyd's of London, who was the ship insuring company, has a website. That would be interesting to know. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the next person, Janice Carter. If you could turn on your webcam and your microphone, and I'll go to your slide.
Oh, well, I'm going to show all that. Can people see me?
I think so. I'm not sure. I've got to turn mine on. Yes.
Okay. Well, a few years ago, I was helping my aunt clean out her home and getting ready to sell it and to move into a nursing home. And she handed me this Eaton's shirt box, which I'm sure a lot of us have these boxes around, and said, here, you can have this. So I then, of course, had to investigate. And we all knew this event had happened, but we didn't, nobody knew about this box of stuff. So in the box are the itinerary. Oh, sorry. My grandfather was chosen as the General Motors representative to go along with the King and Queen, their tour of Canada in 1939. It was the first time that a monarch had toured Canada, and they chose 2 cars to be taking them across the country. Of course, they went by train, but then they went into the cities by cars. And one of them was a General Motors car that my uncle or my grandfather was along to basically service the car if anything happened to it. So in this box is all the stuff that he got for doing this tour. So first is this book, which is a total itinerary with a map of where they went and the stops they made and a description of each city they stopped at with pictures of those places. And this is in pristine condition. It's spiral bound, but also hardcover bound. And there's also a picture of the royal family that he was given, a book about the king that it's presented to him. I forget who the author is, and I can't find it right away. He had collected souvenirs from a lot of the places they went to. A lot of them are menus from the dinners that were given to them, some souvenir booklets from the places they went to. And this is from Winnipeg, and he has 2 copies of it, because this one is signed by about 15 RCMP people who I assume were also along on the trip. So I've got all their signatures and where they're from, and it says RCMP under all their names. And there's a picture of the King and Queen in the car, and another picture someone gave me of them close up. It doesn't show the car as much. And I'm not sure how he got this, but this is the armband from the militia. So I don't know if he had to wear that or if someone gave it to him, but it says Royal Visit on it and a number. And then on his trip, he sent a letter back to every one of his children so that they would have the Royal Train postmark. It was postmarked right on the train and sent out in the mail. It says Royal Train, June 13th. I can't read the time, PM 1939, Canada. And there's some other little paraphernalia in there as well. And that car, I don't know what happened to it between 1940 and late 60s or 70s, but then a friend of mine who's a classic car buff bought the car and had it in his possession for quite some time, and a lot of family members used it for weddings and things like that on the other side of my family. And then that car was sold to a museum up near Ottawa. So
That is so cool, especially
Yeah.
the postage stamps, the cancellation from the Royal.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's a
that's
really neat box
awesome.
to have. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, does anybody have a question for Janice?
I probably can't answer them.
Not seeing one, I'm
Okay.
going to ask you to mute again, and we'll move on to Bob Halfyard, who is a distance member, and I'm really, really pleased that he submitted something for us. And your camera is on, and you look great, Bob. So here we go.
Thank you. My family has a very strong connection with post offices. And this particular letter doesn't show up very well, but it's a photocopy of an original letter announcing to my great-grandfather that he's been appointed postmaster for New Park Post Office. Now, the story was their farm was located at Lot 4, Concession 1, Manvers. And the story was that they used to have to travel to Lescard, which was 2.5 to 3 miles to get the mail. And he would get the mail, apparently, and get all the neighbors' mail. And so somebody said to him, well, if you're carrying the mail, you might as well get to be a postmaster. And so somehow or other, that happened, and he was appointed postmaster and carried on for a number of years. And this is the house, at the family house. My mother is the little girl sitting on the step. This was taken about 1908. There was an itinerant cameraman came, and the whole family is there. And the lady on the very right is my great aunt, Margaret Fuller. And I think she may have some descendants in the area still. And my grandparents do too. They have 2 great-granddaughters living in Clarington. Anyway, the post office was held in that house. Now, New Park never had, but it was never a village. There was a school. At one time, way before my time, there was maybe a Grange Hall. That was it. And as far as I know, some maps still show New Park. And as far as I know, all that's left of New Park is the school, which I believe now is a residence. Okay, this is, I got this, Library and Archives Canada, post offices and postmasters, went into post offices and postmasters. There's the total history of the post office. 31 years, 2 postmasters, my great-grandfather and my grandfather. And it was closed in 1914 for rural mail delivery. And then after that, my grandfather got the contract for deliver mail at Rural Route 3 Pontypool. This is my great-grandfather, James Miller. Dates 1813, born in Ireland, County Monaghan, Ireland, and came to Manvers Township in 1856, died in 1891. And my grandfather was born in Yorkville's Hogs Hollow about 1849, and he died in that farmhouse in 1924. Now, there is a constant connection, family connection with the post office. My mother's oldest, my grandfather's youngest sister and her husband ran the post office in Lescard for over 30 years. And then my mother's oldest sister had working in the post office at home, got a job in the post office in Pontypool. Then she got a job in the post office in Grimsby, where she married. But eventually she came back to Durham County. And after her aunt and uncle died, she and her husband took over the store at Lescard, and they operated the store in the post office in Lescard, the store and post office, for another 30 years. And her granddaughter's husband, was postmaster in Orono. So there's lots of family connection.
Oh, boy. That's great. So do you have any quick tips on how to get more post office information from Library and Archives Canada? Do they have it as a separate database?
Yeah, you go to Library and Archives Canada, and if you look for it, they should have a link for post offices and postmasters. And yeah, there are several links. I have looked them up. I have even looked up the links for post offices in Newfoundland.
Wow.
They have a good collection. They have similar collections like the one I showed. I didn't send it. I've seen that the history of the Lescard post office. There were a lot more postmasters. Yeah, it's a good source. Oh, and I have the postage, the postal stamp from the post office. I've been promising to give it to Manvers Historical Society, but I've got something else I want to give for them that I haven't located. So they haven't got it yet, but I think that's where it's going.
Cool. Well, I've got a question for you. Sharon is asking, is the house still standing?
If which?
The Miller house, is it still standing?
No, unfortunately, sadly, it's not.
Ah, that's too bad.
There's a great, huge gravel pit there.
Oh, okay. And Bob Bell is asking, out of curiosity, have you ever found any stamps franked from there? So
Any which?
stamps that are franked, like that are canceled from your
Yes,
family.
I think I have. I don't make a particular collection of them, but I do have some postcards, and I think that various family postcards, and I think I do have.
Oh, cool.
And also, they do have, if you go to Canada Post too, they have a list of all the post offices, and they also show the frank for each post office, and you can see it there too.
Well, that's interesting, especially for stamp collectors out there. And Bob also asked if you have any postcards of the villages that you mentioned.
Well, I have a couple of postcards of Pontypool. I don't, there was never any village there was never any such village as New Park. So no, I don't have, I have a number of pictures, and I have shared some of my pictures with Manvers Historical Society. They have a website. And if you go onto their website, you'll find some interesting pictures in their website.
Oh, that's really nice. I got a feeling that Bob Bell has a hobby here, talking about stamps and postcards. He's a man of many hobbies. Anyway, I want to thank you very much, Bob. That is really interesting, especially since it's basically in our area. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to move along and ask Dan DeLong to come online and turn on his camera. Oh, there he is. And
Oh, yeah, accomplished. But talking about the post offices before you show my pictures, my chemistry teacher in high school in Peterborough was a Bob. And he wrote a book about the post offices in Smith Township group in Peterborough, and has contributed to a lot of them.
okay. If
So,
any of our
Bowley.
members,
His name is Bowley, Bowley, Bob Bowley.
cool.
You'll see
Yes.
his name on a lot of the Peterborough history documents, even though he was a great chemistry teacher as well.
Okay, so I'm going to show your first picture here.
Oh, yes. Well, I can hold that up. You can get an idea of the size if I hold it up. According to what Anne has looked up for me about hat boxes, my mother had these because she worked at Eaton's in the later years of the war. And my father was on a frigate during the war. And I guess what people had to do then, like if you wanted to buy a hat for a man, or even maybe for a woman, I'm not sure if they had hat boxes for women, but yeah, there'd be another one to show you in a moment. There's another set of pictures, and she's beside me here making sure I tell the whole story. But I understood that you would give a gift of a hat box with a hat in it. Whoops, I've got a couple of hats in this one. You can see the blue one, and there's a gray top hat style. And then I guess the man would then go back to the store and say, I would like this hat, the one that was in the hat box. It's already paid for and be sized for it. And then the picture of the real hat that you see there is kind of in bad shape now, but it's my father's hat from that time period, from just after the war, I believe, or during the war. They got married in 1945 when the war ended, shortly after the war ended in July of 1945. That's when the marriage was. The war ended in May. But you get a look at how these boxes were made. There's another one, and I guess Nancy has that picture too.
Yep.
And that is for the Biltmore Company. And they had a very attractive box. If you turn the box around, you see all these different hats in the pictures. This particular hat box has a plastic hat, hard plastic. I didn't even know they had this sort of thing back then. And it says, it's got some writing on the brim that says Biltmore. And I just, whoops, I'm not holding it in front of the camera, am I? Okay, gives you an idea. And that's about it for what I wanted to show, unless people have more information. People listening in have more information about these hat boxes.
Okay. And then you gave me one more.
Oh,
picture.
yes. That's a plate that we collected back in I thought it was 75, but I see it must have been 72. We took a trip back to the area where Anne grew up in Markham and Unionville. And actually she went to this school. It's now a museum, but it was called the Mount Joy Public School back then in in Mount Joanne. What avenue was it on? The 16th?
Oh, 48.
Highway 48, it was on that. Have they moved it? Oh, okay, so they built the museum, put the museum buildings all around it. But she used to tell me about the library being in the tower, the clock tower. No, I thought that's where it was. Oh, well. She should tell you. She should tell you this. She's over here saying no, but she did tell me that she was in a classroom up in the corner there. She had grade 2.
This is a two-room school, and so it had the younger kids on the bottom floor.
Yeah, her turn.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know he was going to show this. Anyway, it's a different school that he was talking about with the bell tower. But anyway, so this is the school that I went to, and now it's a museum. So that's kind of funny. They've moved all kinds of pioneer buildings into what used to be the schoolyard out behind the school. And but I guess we've had this plate for quite a while, but since yeah,
Oh,
so
very good.
that's all.
So does anybody have any questions for Dan or Anne?
Nope. Oh, I would like to say one more thing. When I did mine, I totally forgot to mention, I'm talking about my great grandfather. I never did say his name, which was William Merchant. So
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lovely name to try and Google, right?
Oh, that's terrible. Try to look that up in a newspaper. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And the other side of my family are Vales. You can't look them up in the newspaper either.
Well, that's worse than brown and green, I'll tell you. Okay. Well, I'm going to do the next one. And I was going through some papers the other day, and I came across this invitation to my grandparents' wedding in 1920. And so Mr. and Mrs. Walter Gould announced the marriage of their daughter Elva to Charles von Wilkins, BSc, at Uxbridge. And where it was in Uxbridge was her parents' house, which was a prominent house in Uxbridge. And then I found it really kind of interesting and unique that down at the very bottom here, it says, at home after December the 1st in Glenmiller, Ontario. I have seen that written up in marriage notices in the newspaper, but I've never seen it on the invitation before. Well, that was the first piece I found. Then I found this envelope. Okay. And in case you can't quite read the writing, marriage certificate for Mrs. Charles V. Wilkins, which is kind of interesting that the marriage certificate went to the wife. And then he's written down at the bottom, Charles V. Wilkins and Elva Gould. And that's a capital G, believe it or not. So I opened it up, and the first piece that came out was this little bit, which was, you can see it's being, I forget what you call it. So you can rip it out, perforated. Same writing as on the envelope, and gives the details of the marriage certificate. Well, we've seen these when we've done Ontario marriage registrations, so that was interesting. But the next piece was really, I felt really quite unique in that the minister, who by the way happened to be the father of the groom, and he actually practiced in Trenton, Ontario, even though the wedding was that one. Not that one, this one, right?
That one.
Okay. Well, the minister was from Trenton, Ontario, and was the father of the groom. And of course, the bride did the actual place of the marriage at her parents' house. But I found it really interesting that he wrote up basically marriage lines for his daughter-in-law. that at the home of the bride in Uxbridge, Ontario on the 16th day of October, 1920, a license, and he gives the license number, has been produced, dispensing with the proclamation of bans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what I really like, he's got a very florid signature, William Thomas Wilkins, minister of the Presbyterian Church of Canada. But this one also has the actual witness signatures too. I found that intriguing. And here is a picture of the happy couple. Unfortunately, it's not the best picture going, but it's very reflective. I don't know why the trees ended up with a very silvery feel to them. But does anybody have any questions for me on that particular presentation? Of course, my whole chat window has gone blank because I got kicked out.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat at the moment, Nancy.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on now and invite Barb Garrow to turn on her microphone and show her picture if she's so inclined. And let her take the spotlight now. Hi, Barb.
Where am I? I can't see myself. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you, so that's good.
Why can't I see myself? Oh, well. This is one of 4 typewritten pages that an aunt, cousin, first cousin of my grandmother on my mother's side, gave to our family. She didn't have children of her own. She lived in Oregon with her husband. Somehow it got back to Michigan, where my mother was born. And it's about her own mother. She must have interviewed or written down little snippets of things that her mother had told her about growing up on a farm in the 1870s and 1880s in Lapeer County, Michigan, which is straight in from Sarnia. So you could see where the green star is. That's where they were. And so I just thought I'd read some snippets of these 4 pages, which I am so happy I have. And so it's my grandmother there is Mabel, and her cousin is Mary Truex, and she's talking about her own mother, Cora, who is telling her what it was like growing up there on the farm. And I think it was just a small, it was 40 acres. I've looked it up on a map, tried to find it, drove around there, and I don't know if I ever really saw it. But anyway, I'll start out here. One line here, torches and candles were used before lamps. And then, where's my next page here? When Cora was little, her father brought home their first kerosene lamp. Her mother was afraid of it, and Cora's father had to take it outdoors to light it to satisfy her mother, who was so afraid of it. Now this one, you may have heard these kinds of things before. It's about tomatoes. Cora had an Aunt Lavina who lived not far away from Cora's home. Aunt Lavina had a patch of tomatoes, and so did Cora's mother. But Cora's mother grew them just for ornament. The tomatoes in those days had deep creases all over them, and some grew bumps that stuck out all over them. Aunt Lavina started to eat her tomatoes with a little salt on them. She ate them out in the patch, picking them from the vine as she ate them. She thought they were good, and soon Cora was eating them out in the tomato patch at her own home. One day her mother caught her and scolded her and told her to stop eating tomatoes, that they were poison and would kill her. Cora told her mother that if they were poison, it was an awful slow poison, for she had been eating them at Aunt Lavina's place for a long time. Cora's mother retorted Aunt Lavina would eat anything. About the next year, her mother cooked the tomatoes to eat, but when she cooked them, it was for hours to get the poison out of them. Okay, and here's a little paragraph. Indians used to camp not far from the Roberts place when Cora was very young. She said she got to know a lot of Indian words and could talk some with them. Once an Indian her father knew quite well came to the house. He had a big turtle strapped to his back. He was taking it to camp to cook it. And this last one, I guess I have a stereotype of people who grew up on farms, and I guess I kind of think that they're sort of serious and practical 4-H types and, you know, early to bed and the whole thing. Anyway, this is a little excerpt about probably my ancestors and their friends. So again, we're talking maybe the 1880s. A group of the young folks used to drive a team of horses and wagon to dances and parties. And an older neighbor in his late 30s lived on a corner, which the group passed on the way to the parties. He complained that he could hear them laugh half a mile away. One night they were coming home in the wagon around 2 o'clock in the morning. So they drove up in front of this place and shouted, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," by the coarsest, loudest voice in the group. This neighbor, Frank Fallahay, got up, lit the kerosene lamp, set the lamp by a table close to the door, opened the door, looked out, and asked what they wanted. The kids in the wagon said that was the funniest thing they ever saw, seeing Frank standing in the open door with a nightgown on that came to his knees and his hair ruffled up, silhouetted against the bright light behind him. The teenage youngsters laughing shouted at him. I'm not going to say what they shouted. He shouted back, "Go to hell," and slammed the door shut. So I figured out that maybe farm kids have always been like that. I don't know, but they had their rowdy teenagers back in the 1880s, I guess, the same as we do now. So there's more, but that's you know, something that I feel, not a huge biography. It's not a big pedigree chart or anything, but I'm just really glad I've got these little snippets of life, you know, what life was like for those people back then. So that's it.
Yeah, because you can't find that anywhere
No, I
else.
guess not. I don't know where you'd
Yeah.
find it. Yeah.
It's unique. Well, Sharon is saying very funny.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Okay, thanks so much, Barb. That
You're
was very interesting, and you are so lucky to have that.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to call in, call Steve Wood to turn on his camera and microphone. There you are. Hi, Steve. And I'm going to go to your first picture.
Okay, can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This was my grandparents' clock. They were born in 1878, 1879, and didn't have a lot of money, so this wouldn't be a very expensive clock to begin with, probably. But this stood in their house for years and years, and my grandmother outlived my grandfather by at least 10 years. Well, sometime after my grandfather died, my grandmother decided to put it in a different location where it didn't quite fit. So my father, who had been just a teenager at the time, ended up cutting the top off of it, right to the trim you can see at the very top. He did a real good job and shortened it down. I'm not sure, probably by a couple of inches or more. It looks like maybe some trim came off the front edges too, because it looks like it's been touched up there. But okay, next slide. Thank you. This is another view with the door open. It looks quite pristine inside, but looks can kind of be deceiving. When I was growing up, the clock part did not work, but if you move the hands around with your finger, and to the hour or to the half hour, you could get the chimes to work. So being a very helpful and curious teenager, I decided to oil it and clean it and maybe get everything working. And I took the back off and proceeded to try and clean it. That didn't work. Still just did what it did. So I took a screwdriver to it and I just was going to pull the plate off to maybe get more of the dirt out. Well, the spring was at full winding tension. Kaboom. The thing exploded in my face. And I spent probably the next month trying to get it back together. It does not work quite like it used to, even less than it used to, shall we say that? But I did get I had no parts left over. Next slide. So it's not worth much, but it is a curiosity. Interestingly enough, it's by the Galena, I believe it is, clock company out of Connecticut. There is a little date written on the corner of one of the pieces of paper that says, well, 97, and I believe they mean 1897. So that might be kind of an indication of the age of the clock. But it actually is in quite good shape, other than it was chopped down shorter. And of course, some kid reassembled it, not knowing what the heck he was doing. But it's a keepsake nonetheless, because it looks pretty good still, and the story behind it. And that's all I've got to say. It's just an interesting family artifact that's been passed down to me, and I'll pass it along should one of the girls want it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for a very amusing story. I can see it happening.
Yeah.
You were
Those
very
springs,
helpful.
A lot of tension.
You were a very helpful teenager, that's for sure. Now, has anybody else got anything they wish to share? And did anybody, I've lost my chat window, so I didn't notice if anybody had put a name and a topic in previous to my glitch.
Nancy, it's Kim. I don't see any questions and I don't see any volunteers at the moment.
Okay. What I'm going to do then is I've got a little, just a tiny little tidbit that I recently found out about the OGS website, and about 5 or 6 slides. I'm going to show that. And then I'm going to stop presenting, and we're going to just be social and talk about anything and everything that's on your minds, genealogy wise or family wise or Christmas wise.
Oh,
It'll be
sorry,
free for all.
Nancy.
Yes.
Jim mentions he has a slide that he
Nancy.
would like to share.
Okay. So
Nancy?
just a moment, Jim, and we'll let Bob talk. Bob Halfyard. Yes.
It just occurred to me. My aunt and uncle were married 100 years ago today in Pontypool Methodist Church, the new Methodist Church. Pontypool had there'd been a fire and burned, and they were the first wedding in the church.
Oh, cool.
And I know my mother played the organ. And a few years ago, I came across the write-up of the wedding, and I haven't got it handy. But it's sort of interesting to think that happened just at that particular time.
So 100 years ago today, that is cool. Thank you for sharing that. So
yeah, the other thing is my parents, as you saw the picture of the farmhouse.
Yes.
My parents were married on the front lawn of that farmhouse, and like most people then, people sent out, they didn't have big weddings, but most people sent out wedding marriage announcements. And I have my mother's and several of my aunts and uncles. That was pretty common back then.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Okay. I'm going to now call on Jim. And good, we've got both sound, I hope.
Yep, I think so.
Okay.
Can I share my screen?
Uh,
Or-
you may indeed. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
Actually, I'll put that over to Kim. Kim, can you share the screen?
Yeah, I've co-hosted him, so he should be able to share. Do you
Oh,
know how to
perfect.
do it, Jim?
Yep. Do you see that now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I have a story to share. Thanks to everybody for listening. I haven't been able to make too many meetings this year because of other reasons, but I have a story to tell about what happened to me about 2 months ago. My daughter is now at Trent University, so I now have a reason to travel to the east side of Toronto from Georgetown. And my brother was home visiting from northern Germany. And we decided to go to Lakefield to visit where our family had been 100 years ago in Lakefield. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, and I think the previous generation was born there as well. So as we were walking along Bapty Lane, this is a picture here of Peter Bapty, who is my great-great-grandfather. We were able to actually walk by the house that Peter Bapty built in Lakefield. So my brother and I were able to actually go into the house, and the picture in the upper corner is me actually getting a tour from the owner. We were quite pleased that the owner of the home, their family had bought it in the 1940s, had installed a plaque to say that the house was built by Peter Bapty. And as a result of this tour, we were able to fortunately return the family portrait, which is the Bapty family there from around 1892, 1893, back to, or a copy of the family portrait, back to the family home 70 years later. The pictures that you have here were actually also received by me this year from my aunt. They have been hanging in her home for the past 2 or 3 decades. And the picture of Peter Bapty that I have acquired, or that I'm the family guardian of, I remember hanging in the basement of my grandmother's house in the late 1960s. Just one thing to remind everybody about is when you're looking at registrations, I've put the death registration here for Peter Bapty because I hadn't really looked at it for a while. And what you can see is Peter Bapty is listed on the very first item, but then 3 registrations down below is Catherine Park Trail. So you never quite know what you're going to find when you actually are looking for records that are not necessarily for your relative, but may find other famous Canadians in your travels as you go from there. So I thought I'd just share that with everybody. And you never know what you're going to find out when you are walking around and the opportunities that you can get when you go through. As it happens, what you don't see as the pictures, because my brother hasn't sent them from Germany back to me yet, is that the woodwork in the house that Peter Bapty built. Peter Bapty built a lot of homes in Lakefield around the 1870s, 1860s or so. And there's tremendous woodwork in the home. So we were really quite privileged to be able to tour through our great-great-grandparents' home some, I guess, almost 70 years later since the family has left the home has left the family. So that's all I have to share. I don't know if there's any questions at all.
Yes, there is. Sharon's asking, where is Lakefield?
Oh, where is Lakefield? Okay, sorry. Lakefield is a great place to go. You just basically hop on up on the highway up to Peterborough, and then you keep going north out of Peterborough on the Otonabee. So it's basically north of Trent University. My daughter's residence room, because she's now in first year nursing at Trent, is actually looking across the river to where our original family farm was in the 1830s when our family first came to the Smith Township. So It's been a bit of a retro look with now a family member returning back to the Peterborough Lakefield area. It's well worth the trip to go to Lakefield. It's a really quaint place to go, and quite a lot of interesting places. Also, if you study the Strickland family, they also, Susanna Moody, Catherine Partrail and gang, as well as, let me get this right, Margaret Lawrence also, I believe. It's if you're looking for authors, Canadian authors, Lakefield is the place to go, because I believe that Margaret Lawrence also lived in Lakefield at one time as well. So a very interesting trip, and it doesn't take very far to get from Oshawa to Lakefield, unlike traveling from Georgetown, which is a much longer trip. If you have a child that lives on the other side of the city, it's 8 hours if you have to go back and forth to pick them up on a weekend. So I learned.
Yes. So Lynn Gaynor has said, that's amazing. Catherine Partrail is one of my favorite artists. Very cool. And Anne told us that Trent University has lots of historical records. And that's true. I've been up there on a tour through their archives at the Trent University. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, the archivists are very good. I actually, we were talking about Manvers previously. And a lot of the court records from Durham, from Manvers, are actually at the Trent University archives. And I was actually able to acquire, about a decade ago, the papers for the Inquisition of the death of John Gray. So those of you from Manvers, if you know where Gray Road is, it gives the description of the discovery of the body of John Gray. So you can get very interesting things when you go through, and it actually, that record actually has all, or it's a copy of it, has all these gentlemen's stamps that had to attest to finding John Gray's body in the basement of his farmhouse. And that's another story.
Yes, yes. I've noticed that the Trent archives has the original submissions of the early ministers who had to send the marriages into the, I can't remember, I don't think it was the county, I think it was the district marriage register.
Newcastle district?
That they've got there.
Peterborough, yeah.
Yeah, so the district of actually Newcastle.
Newcastle, yeah.
Yeah. So Sharon is saying, good story. Thank you very much. And I thank you too. That was awesome. And
thank you.
I'm sorry I missed your PowerPoint.
That's okay. It happens.
Guess I didn't check back into my email before the meeting late enough anyway. But I'm glad you were able to share and tell us about it. And that was cool. I really, really liked that. Thanks. Thank you very much. And so at this point, I'm just going to do what I said I was going to do. Let me go back to my PowerPoint and share. And so I have a little topic here. Something I just found out. It is well hidden on the Ontario Ancestors or Ontario Genealogical Society, whichever one you want to call it, on their website. So it's something called branch indexes. And it's basically a page of links over to the branch website where they do hold the indexes. Keep in mind, not all branches are represented. We aren't at this point, but we're going to be soon, I hope. And the links are to both public indexes and to branch members only indexes. So if you're not a branch member, you won't be able to actually get into those databases. But I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. It's kind of hiding in plain sight, but you know, I want to show you how to get to it, because if I'm sure you've probably got research in more than just Durham region, and you might just find the branch indexes helpful. So when you go to ogs.on.ca, one way you can look at the branch indexes is to look at their banner. And oh dear, sorry. And the banner, it consists of 5 or 6 different things that slide after about 3 or 4 seconds. And I managed to catch it, and you can click there. But of course, they change those images quite frequently. And so I'm actually going to show you how to get to where you can get to it all the time. And that's to go and click on the branch and SIGs button in the menu here. And when you do that, you get a page that looks something like this, lists all the branches. If it's got an extension beside it, you know that you can leave a message in the mailbox attached to the main OGS number. And you look quickly around it, and if you're like me, you click on that and then you go down and look at these links here. Well, you've got to pause. You got to pause and you got to read the second item down. And it says, you can click on here for a listing of many branched indexes and records. So when you click here, you get to a site that lists the branches, and this is just the top part, lists the branches that have got the indexes showing here. And you click on the plus button. I picked Bruce Gray, and it comes up and it shows you clickable links that you can go through to these specific indexes. And I chose the top one here and got to Bruce County's website, Bruce and Gray Branch's website. And these are, click the links to go to PDF documents. Census is on one side, cemeteries on the other side. So I clicked one of them just to see, you know, could I get through to it? Was it a public one, or did I have to be a member? And it downloaded onto my computer, and here's a quick little shot of this 1861 census of Albemarle Township. So it was freely available. I got the whole index that they've done for that index, for that particular census. Now, that's not the case for all the branches. Some things are going to be behind the membership wall, but it certainly would be a lot of fun to go and explore all these free, and even knowing they've got an index might make it worth your while to join the branch for the year. So that's my cute little tip. And I'm just going to show you quickly our next meeting, and then I'm going to stop sharing again, and we can all turn on cameras and microphones and have a good social chat. So we've still got 45 minutes or so that we can use up with our social time. So our next meeting is going to be Dave Obey, who's a well-known speaker at OGS events. His topic is In Search of Home, Migration into, Out of, and Within Canada. This is our January 4th meeting by Zoom. And here's just a quick blurb about the talk itself. Understanding the flow of people will help you understand how your family fits in the history of the country. In some cases, records are available in Canada and in other countries. But in other cases, researchers will need to consider social history and traditional migration routes to understand the lives of their ancestors. The presentation will include a look at the social history of the arrival of the railway, which helped bring massive development to the 4 Western provinces. The railways brought settlers and helped them get their goods to markets. The railway companies had a keen interest in bringing in settlers and ran colonization schemes designed to entice people to the West. And I can attest to that because I had people from Lanark County who ended up homesteading in Manitoba because of this. So at this point, I'm just going to stop share. And if you are on a desktop or a laptop, somewhere near the top, there's a little button called View. And if you click on that, you're able to pick gallery view. So that will bring up everybody who's still here in a, you know, a melange of cameras. And I encourage everybody, if you've got a camera, to turn it on, and anything's up for grabs. You can talk about anything. Just I'd suggest that everybody stay mute unless you want to say something. But if you do want to say something, unmute yourself and say, hello.
Hello.
Okay, Sharon.
Yeah. I gotta say that we're coming up to 2 years ago that I joined our group. And I was also introduced to a member who has a group, the Johnston Clan. And also I have joined that group. DNA with my son has proved that we're part of that particular clan. And I have found more family members through genealogy groups like this one, through the library and that. Yeah, it has been so rewarding.
That is great. Okay, anybody else have a topic? Oh, Anne's got her hand up. Go ahead, Anne.
Well, I just like to say, Dan and I, we put our DNA into 23andMe several years ago, and we found a few interesting relatives to talk to. It was, but a couple of weeks ago, I found a relative who lives in the same town that I do, that I had never met. So she's a second cousin, twice removed. But it was interesting. Not too often. Bowmanville's not that big that you expect to find relatives you didn't know you have in it, but that's what happened. So
that's cool. Have you explored if she's got any records that you don't?
I haven't yet. So, but that may happen. We're just at the stage of sharing pictures right now. So,
well,
yes.
That's great, because pictures sometimes are even better than records. Harder to find too. Is anybody else? I mean, now both of that is kind of DNA topics. If anybody else has got a DNA story, go ahead. If not,
so
pick another topic. I mean, this can be a free for all. I don't have to host this,
Well, I have a DNA story.
Okay.
Yeah, I found when I had my first DNA done by Ancestry, I found that I had a different biological father. And all of a sudden, within months, I had close to 1,000 family members. And so I thought, well, maybe it's a mistake. So I got 23andMe, and that nearly 1,000 people jumped even more with 23andMe, the same family.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So
have you contacted them and been welcomed, or?
Yep. I am 3 female first cousins I have been in touch with online. And one person we did share pictures sent back and forth, and they're awesome. And they says, don't worry about it, your skeletons, we got plenty more. And so at any rate, so we've had a chance now. Just by coincidence, yesterday I got a message that it's the birthday of my biological half sister. And at the end of the month, it is not half sister, half brother's daughter. And it's my half brother's birthday at the end of the month. But in this email from MyHeritage, I had the opportunity to send them a happy birthday message. So
cool.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed that one of them at least replies, Because I
That-
did put a message that I'm recently found that they're part of my family, or I'm part of their family.
It can be very life altering, is my understanding,
Yeah.
to run into that.
Well, fortunately enough, I'm 75, so it's been a long time since my father passed away. My kids are in their 50s, but they've grown up with their grandfather when they were young. And so when I had to get on with them on a Zoom and tell them that I'm sorry, but Chuck isn't my biological father. He's not your biological grandfather. They says, that's okay.
Yeah. Well, if they're the ones that nurture you, they're just as important to the family as the biological parents, or even more
Yeah.
important, because they're
So-
sociologically your parent, grandparent, whatever.
I'm hoping my biological brother will get in touch with me. He's 2 years younger than I am.
Oh, well, hopefully. Although I have known people who have ended up being rejected by closer relatives than cousins. So
That's okay. That doesn't
I
matter.
hope, just be prepared. That's the only
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Anne had her hand up. I'm gonna go
Yes.
to Anne next.
Okay, I would say that because my husband Dan DeLong, that we've had a lot of family reunions and things like that. So we really were well versed in his side of the family, particularly the DeLongs, because of all those reunions and all the people. But through DNA, we were able to contact some people that, like, we knew that if we ever could find them, they would be relatives, but that didn't mean that we knew where they were, right? So that was
Yeah.
interesting. But still, even though we had done all this research on, third cousins and fourth cousins, fifth cousins, through the 23andMe, Dan found that he had his nephew's son had a son that he didn't know about.
Okay.
So, who contacted him and said, like, who are you?
I have a story about that.
And he
but-
lives in Oshawa.
Close. Okay. Jim has got his hand up. He's found the reactions button, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Sharon, that's a really interesting story that you have there. How have you found the way that people have been communicating with you? I've put together, I think because I have a fairly large tree posted on Ancestry, I've actually linked about 5 family members to their actual biological trees. And some people receive it really, really well. And some people don't necessarily receive it very, very well. And I learned to say, remember to ask the question, why have you done your DNA? I think that's the first thing before you actually disclose that you know that they are related to you as a second cousin or whatever. I have a similar story where I put together for my mother's second cousin. He did not know who his father was and had spent an entire lifetime. He's now in his middle 80s. And he didn't know that he had 2 half sisters, and they're actually in Scotland. So I'm doing this remote, and I was able to bring together him and his 2 half sisters after 80 years. So how was the experience so far, Sharon, with respect to communication between very close family members?
Well, these first cousins, they weren't that far off me. But they had no trouble with it. I got a funny feeling they know that part of the family were a little bit rogue. I'm not the only child he fathered out of wedlock. So there was another one besides myself, and then he had 2 children with his wife. But no, there's not a problem, not a problem as far as my new family is concerned. And as I said, I'm hoping that my biological half brother will contact me, or his daughter. But and my kids, actually, my youngest son, after I told them on a Zoom because they live in different places. I told them, my youngest son now does genealogy. He's fallen in love with it since I found that family, and he's added to our family search tree, but he's expanding it through his wife so that he's not overlapping, but joining.
Mhm.
Yeah, I find that really easy. I actually brought together all of my trees into one tree to allow for all the family members to all join in on our base tree in Ancestry, and it's been much easier to help everybody to do it that way, is to link in the
Well, I've
trees.
done that with my family search tree.
Yeah.
And my new family is on Ancestry where my DNA was taken. So, but I've also put it on GEDmatch, so
Okay.
it's out there.
You can migrate. You can migrate your DNA from Ancestry, and I'm sure you're probably aware, to Family Tree DNA, as well
Yes.
as to MyHeritage. So just you can
Yes,
spread it out
it's
everywhere.
on,
Yeah,
it's on both of those as well.
absolutely. Great story.
Great
Yep.
story. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Maybe I
And-
can tell another quick story. I've been
Okay.
doing genealogy now for 2 years only, but I've really come a long way. And I'm classified as legally blind.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
if anybody says, well, I can't because, just let them know nothing's impossible.
That's right.
And I'm 75, starting a new hobby.
Well, genealogy is what got me familiar with computers back in the day, back in the 1990s, I guess it was. Anyway, Janice has got her hand up. Go ahead, Janice.
I think Sheila had her hand up before me.
Oh, I missed that. Sorry. Go ahead, Sheila. You need to
How do I-
unmute.
Yeah, okay.
There we go.
No, I'm just going to change the subject.
That's fine.
But I guess 3 years ago, early 2018, I was talking to my dad because he had a plaque in his room with my uncle's medals from World War II. And so at that time, I ordered the A-tip records, which Glenn Wright had talked to us about last month when he talked, and it just came.
Oh,
I got, there must be close to 75 pages or something. So it took more than 3 years for it to come, but very interesting. Got lots of reading to do.
I'll say you do. Yeah. Now, you said did you go through the access to information?
Well, I
route?
didn't at the time because I didn't see that.
Okay.
I just requested the records, but
Okay.
it says a tip on the return address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So very.
So that was one of the best things. If you're a member, you can go, or was he? I think he's out on the main YouTube. Dan, do you remember? Dan? Anne's yelling at Dan.
Oh.
They have to separate their computers or they get a whine.
She's shaking her head. Yes.
No, okay. But Glenn Wright did the military topic for us about World War II last month. And I think the best thing I got out of that is when you request a service file from World War II at the Library and Archives Canada, there's 2 ways to do it. One is just to request it, and it takes forever, as I think Sheila
Yes.
alluded to. And the other one is to file an access ATIP, access to information request, and it costs $5. to file that, but he said that $5 is well worth it because they are required by law to answer them first.
Right. And after we had that webinar, I requested my dad's, and I got an email back immediately and paid the $5 and everything. So
hopefully you'll be able to tell us how long that takes.
right.
Okay. So we're on to Janice. And Sheila, you can put your hand down.
Well, I just thought I would share I find it rather amusing little story. Most of you who know me know that I've been searching my family for well over 40 years, and they all came from very close to where I live. So the research has been reasonably easy, even when I had to go to the archives and things. It's been reasonably easy. And I've had mostly farmers in the family with nothing out of the ordinary, no scandals, except maybe some early first children born, just good people, but boring to search. So I've decided recently that I would look into both my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law's families. And neither one of them is interested. So I'm not going to research deeply, but my son-in-law has Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Bernardo children. My daughter-in-law has several very dysfunctional families with people that came from India and Kenya, and separate children not born in wedlock, and all kinds of interesting things. So my frustrating thing is not my brick walls, but that I have all these people that I could research deeply, but they don't care about it. Just something interesting.
Yes, yes, very interesting. Well, at least you're going to have challenges.
Well, I'll have to see how deep I'm going to go into it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now, I think my next person was Ellen. Ellen Brown. Go
Hi.
ahead.
Hi. Well, I heard a couple of people talk about Manvers, and that's where my Irish ancestors settled in the 1800s. So my ancestors are McGills, Browns. So if any of you that are from Manvers area and your ancestors are McGills or Browns, we're probably related.
Oh,
I was able to
cool.
find online where they came from in Ireland.
Lucky you. Oh
well,
my goodness.
Somebody else had done all the research, and then I went to a couple of the Ireland sites and confirmed what this person had listed. So yeah, so that's on my dad's side. My mother's side is from, well, they were Ukrainian from when my grandfather came over, it said he was from Austria. And when his brother came over, it said he was from Poland.
Yeah.
I might have that reversed because it was
shifting borders and shifting political entities.
So
Yes.
I've also been able to find the village and the house number where they came from as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I can't go too much further back. I think I can go a generation or two back on that side.
Yeah.
From them.
Rose, oh dear, the last name's escaping me. Steve, do you? Rose Hately has Ukrainian background in our group.
Okay.
So
Okay,
she
next.
might be one that you could chat with too.
Okay.
You might see Galicia, like
ICIA.
Austrian
Galicia.
Galicia. Yeah.
Actually, I think that might have been what my grandfather said.
Yeah.
But I was able to narrow down the village. And I went to Ukraine in the year 2000, totally unrelated to genealogy. And the city where I went is about half an hour drive to the village where my grandfather was from. And
Cool.
I've been back a number of times, but whenever we've gone to that village, it's been a special occasion and there's nobody around. So I haven't been able to connect with any descendants that stayed in Ukraine,
Yeah.
but I have connected with some relatives that ended up in Sudbury, Ontario.
Yeah.
So
Go
yeah,
ahead.
we've had a couple of reunions for that side. But the one, I just found one about a year ago, so we haven't had a reunion that included her and her family. So we're looking forward to actually having physical reunions sometime in the next couple of years.
That's great.
Yeah.
You are so lucky that you were able to pinpoint the village.
Mhm.
My
Well-
Manvers families are, because who was it? Bob had Manvers families and Jim does too.
Yeah.
Okay.
McGill, Shackleton, Gray. That's not me, my wife's families. They're the same. They're Irish Protestants that settled in Manvers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and mine are McGuire and Ingram and Hamilton and Kavanaugh, and they married into a lot of the families in Manvers, but
Well,
not your.
none of yours I recognize, Nancy, but
Yeah.
Jim, you said McGill and
Yeah.
Shackleton.
Yeah, Shackleton. They're buried in Nestleton. Most of the family's buried in Nestleton Cemetery.
Okay.
And in Yelverton and in Janetville.
Okay.
Yeah.
And most of mine are Lifford Cemetery, Bethany, and some in Yelverton, and
Yeah,
probably a handful in Janetville. Yeah. So
I
I
probably
grew up.
knew each other.
Yeah, I grew up in Manvers, until
Okay.
I went to university. So yeah.
Okay,
Nancy.
my next hand up is Sharon. Sharon,
Okay, I guess I can hear.
yes?
Yeah, I think it's off.
Yes, we can hear you.
Anyways, I am looking for help for my friend. Her grandfather was a member of the SS and he was in charge of a concentration camp. Unfortunately, she cannot find any records of anybody that was involved with SS before Hitler. So in other words, she can't even track her grandfather down. A lot of records from SS members, the Nazis, were destroyed. Do you know of anybody that has ever worked on any of that?
No, I'd almost suggest like German background is very common in the US, not so much up in Canada. Some obviously,
Yeah.
and some early German Pennsylvania people came up to Berlin area, which is now Kitchener. But no, I can honestly say I can't think of anyone. There is there still a German folklore society down Kitchener Way? Anybody know?
Well, if you ever come across anybody, I'd be very interested. My friend is very knowledgeable about researching. So
Okay.
she really has worked hard and she's gotten into a lot of places in Germany, etc. And even Bavaria is one of the areas where she's related. So she doesn't have many ancestors because they were all born, raised, and died over there.
Yeah. Well, my understanding for
Nancy?
German, yes.
Do you suppose that they destroyed just before they surrendered, that they would have destroyed most of the records?
It's
They
very
did.
possible.
They did. This is what she's been told by genealogists in the area, that most records were destroyed.
Yeah.
Because when you apparently when you join the SS, you have to prove biologically that you are a German, a true German, and that your ancestors, your parents, and everybody around you is German. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you can't join.
Yeah.
In fact, her and her mother and her siblings were all excommunicated because they weren't pure German.
Interesting. Yeah. All I can suggest, well, I can suggest going to the Family Search Wiki and looking up Germany, and if you have any idea, like my understanding for German research is you have to know the village.
Oh, yes, she knows.
Yeah.
She stayed with her grandmother at times after the war.
Okay. But I mean, the village that her grandfather came from before he joined the SS. Then you can get parish records on microfilm from, well, they've digitized the microfilm. It should be somewhere on the Family Search website. But I'm no expert. I'd look down to the US to see if there's any how-to German books from, say, the National Genealogical Society or one of the Pennsylvania, perhaps, societies on how to do German. Beidler.
There are a lot of Germans in Pennsylvania?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Earlier on, though, probably, I think I've heard or read somewhere that the second most common ethnicity of the US population is German.
Oh,
yeah. So they're very much a lot of people who are researching their German ancestors.
Okay.
And I think it's Jim Beidler, Biedler. I think he's authored a book down there. I was on a talk last night or 2 nights ago where he was a co-host. But that's one name.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Now, I would say Pennsylvania, though, you're talking back in the 1700s, maybe, Steve, I'm getting a nod from Steve, would be when the German immigration came into Pennsylvania. But I'm talking the whole US. I think I heard 30% of the US population has German background. So I'm getting a nod from Heather too. Okay.
You might want to think about land records as one part, because my sister-in-law's family is now getting all of their property returned back to them because it was taken away by the communists. My brother lives in East Germany, and all their property is has been returned back to them based on the land records. So it might be something different than genealogy, but looking at where property is being returned, something to think about.
Yeah. So I got, let me see, I've got a message in the chat from Kim. For those with Irish ancestors, we were talking about Manvers Township there. You might be interested in the Ireland Special Interest Group. They are doing a webinar on Thursday night at 7 p.m. called Surviving the Famine, Tracing the Irish Famine Generation in Ontario. And the Ireland SIG does have a website. So if you go through that page I showed you on the Ontario Ancestors website called Branches and SIGs, you can click on the link to the Ireland SIG, and I'm sure they'll have a registration link up on their page for you to click. Kim also mentioned Canada Ireland Foundation, so maybe that's who's talking. Somebody from the Canada Ireland
Yeah,
Foundation.
that's the speaker. I think there's a
Speaker,
couple of people, yeah.
okay. And John,
Bob's got
John,
his hand up.
yeah, I'm still working with the Nazi stuff. John says that Simon Weissenthal Center tracks Nazis. They might help. So maybe, John, you can tell us, where is this center based out of in the chat, and we can, Sharon can look at that. So now I still got Bob Bell with his hand up. So you need to, there you go.
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with it. First, in regards to the German and SS, I would presume a lot of records were destroyed. So I would take a two-prong approach. I would presume that there's probably some individual private records. So checking people that belong to genealogy societies and online genealogies might give you information that, and then the second prong would be the DNA testing. And especially given, as Nancy says, huge numbers, and I've seen the stats on it and the numbers, even into, I think it was, like even to 1900, there was huge numbers of Germans coming in. So some of those people that migrated might have brought family history. So I would be looking for even connections, DNA down into the States, and that might loop you around. And those people might have had information on their cousin that we didn't talk about during the war. But just as a tip for you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
The problem is that she's had her DNA on for 2 years.
Yep.
And it's all over. It's in GEDmatch, it's in MyHeritage, everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a place, and as many relatives as she can get that's related to her, because you never, if it's further back, you might have she might have not inherited the German part, but her sister might have, or her cousin might have. So if you can get more people, you up your
That's
probability.
an idea. She should try and get her sister or her brother.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
know whether they will.
Both, get both.
Both.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
they will.
Yeah, if they
They're over
will.
in Germany.
Yep. And then other comments, Manvers has been mentioned a lot. I've got a lot of family, Pontypool area and all that. So if anybody's related to Struts, Glennies, Thompsons, I have my grandmother's aunt was Maud Brown, married to Brown, Port Perry area. They ended up in. So I've got a lot of relatives there. One of my greats was killed driving a wagon down the Long Sioux Hill way back when. But if anybody has any connections to those families or any other, I've got a fair amount of data. And then I guess for show and tell, I finally talked one of my sisters into getting her DNA tested. It's a half sister, and which is sort of interesting because it shows different angles and okay, which ones are our commons. And with her doing it, one of my full sisters also got tested. So we've got one more to convince. I'll probably end up paying for hers at some point. But the one sister has actually, I've given her access to my ancestry. I think I reported it last year. A friend of mine that just likes doing work, I gave her access to my ancestry. She put in a pile of more information on my tree just for the fun of it. And then my sister went in and did a pile more too, and which has really been great for me because nobody in the family has ever been doing it till I've been chiseling away at them for you know, Janice says 40 years, and finally somebody says, oh yeah, maybe genealogy. And, and so Janice, don't give up with your in-laws and your, keep throwing them tidbits, and you just have to hit the right button. And oh, okay, oh, you found out that? I didn't know that. That's how I first got into genealogy. Is I was at my grandmother's place, and she said, oh, by the way, so-and-so died. And it was some distant cousin. And of course, my line was, who's so-and-so? She started to explain, and I started to write, and I filled a book that night.
Wow.
Just a pad. But, so you never know what, keep sharing with them, even if they're not interested right off. Don't deluge them, but just a few tidbits here and there was my suggestion to you as well. But that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Bob. That's interesting. And Barb has her hand up now. Go ahead, Barb.
I think I'm unmuted.
You're still, yeah, we can hear you.
I've been trying, it's probably a simple answer here, but a German language newspaper in Detroit, because I have an obit from an English language newspaper there, but also in a German language newspaper, because, some of my ancestors were US and came over from Germany in the late 1800s, I guess. And I cannot find, it's just a clipping, the German one with no, it doesn't say what newspaper it's from. So there must have been German language newspapers in Detroit. I don't know how to find the name of the newspaper.
Oh.
But you'd think
Can you get it translated?
Well, I understand it, I took German in high school,
Okay.
but anyway, it's kind of similar to the English language one. So, but I want to see the German language newspaper and see if, I don't imagine it's digital. I don't know if it's searchable or anything like that, but at least know the name of it. See if I can find it somewhere.
I wonder if there's a genealogical society in Detroit that you could contact.
Thank you. Why didn't I think of that? Yeah.
Try and call the Central
Michigan.
Library.
The which?
Jim, say that again.
Yeah, most cities will have a main central library
Right,
service,
okay.
and call the library. Like sometimes you can call Toronto
Right,
library and really
reference.
get reference library, and they have they're like an archives on the side.
Okay,
They could probably, you're right, the library could probably tell you too.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they
good.
would at
Thank
least
you.
have some idea of what the German speaking newspapers would have been. You've got the
Yeah.
obituary. I assume you've got the date of the obituary or the date of the death.
I've got
but-
date of death. I don't even know the date of the paper, the
Yeah,
date.
well, it's obviously going to be after the date of death, so somewhere around there.
Yeah,
And they should be able to tell you which German newspapers were in existence at that point, hopefully.
I knew it'd be a simple answer. Call the library.
Oh, something fell over.
What was that? Oh, my camera went.
Yes.
Fell off the top. I just have it dangling on the top of the, where is
Yeah.
it? There.
I put a couple comments in the chat for you regarding looking in Germany. That's a very good idea. Is look for German newspapers or reports of the time to find information. You never know. You might. And I put a link to a German American newspaper.
Thank
that
you.
goes way back.
And Kim's put in a Michigan one, a
Okay.
Michigan local government.
Society?
I'm not sure.
They're-
It's quite a
they're-
long link.
They're German newspapers in Michigan, in
No
Detroit.
kidding. After all these years, see?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kim. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay, I'm moving on to Anne.
Nancy, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
Heather
Janice.
has had her hand up physically for a long time.
Yeah, I can't seem to get I can't seem to do it otherwise. It's okay. I'm happy listening in. Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Heather. Go ahead, Heather.
No, I just wanted to say to folks how much I'm enjoying this, and particularly because I have no research like this whatsoever, because I'm fresh off the boat. And I know every cousin I possess, and there are thousands of them, and they all live in my neighborhood, and the one or two in Ireland we don't talk about. But so I and I'm yeah, so because I was told I was all Scottish, but it's not true. So a little bit of Irish in every one of us. So
Okay.
yeah, I just
Well,
want to say
thank
thank
you.
you. And also the reason I'm here with the, I'm a Toronto branch member, and I see Joanne Green's here too, and for a lot of years. And I got to you folks through a book I was working, I used to work for writers, a researcher, and fell in through Home Children. I discovered Home Children, and we tried to get something going with Home Children long before it became fashionable to understand about them and knowledgeable about them. And from Home Children, it led me to the Underground Railroad and Black history in Ontario and in the United States, and a guy called Grandison Boyd. And through the Underground Railroad connection, I found Quakers, and you've got a lot of Quakers in Durham, and so the connection between Quakers and the Underground Railroad and my Black history, and so that's where my interest is, and
Yes.
And you folks are quite fascinating to listen to. So I've been hanging around this branch for a couple of years, and I know Nancy very well, and I come in whenever I can, and I very much appreciate you letting me hang around when I don't have any. I do have Durham research. What's the name of the place, Stephen? That the town is now Ajax,
Pickering?
where
Pickering.
Oh no, I know no Pickering, no. The Orbis family. I go by there where they were where the Orbis is my main Quaker family, and I share that with Stephen Wood and his wife, I think, and a bunch of other people. And anyway, so thank you for letting me hang around. I just wanted to say that before you vanished off, and you're fascinating, and I love it.
Well, thank you for the compliment. So Steve, where is the Orvis family?
Oh,
now I'm curious.
They're the right off of Ravencroft. That was their land. It was I'll tell. That was my guys, not your one, but my guys. I'll tell you where he is. I have buckets of stuff on Orbises. Let's just get it together. He's from
Greenwood?
No, it's not there anymore. It's now Ajax. It's it's now a
Pickering
street.
Village.
Yeah,
Pickering Village, Duffins Creek.
No, he's not there. He had a broken land at the bottom, but then he moved up to. No, it'll come.
There's Audley.
Audley, thank you. Audley. I was just
okay.
Audley, and he had a big chunk of land there, but then he left, and he went to Minnesota and Wisconsin, rather. I'm sorry, and was very successful in Wisconsin, and absolutely fascinating. And I've been up to my ears in Quakers for a long time, and I got to try on Nancy's great hat the other day.
Okay, I'll show them.
Yeah. Quakers are fascinating people.
Okay.
The hat.
There's the hat box.
That's the best show and tell I've ever seen, Nancy.
My head's too big.
You have to tell us what his name is now. Your great.
Okay, so this hat belonged to Isaac James Gould.
Famous Quaker.
He was Quaker. He was a Quaker. His father, Joseph Gould, was one of the supposedly one of the founding fathers of Uxbridge, but take that with a grain of salt. But Joseph Gould was in the first representative parliament in Toronto, in York. And Isaac James, his son, continued that tradition, and he was an MPP for Uxbridge North. So
Very good.
felted beaver.
Amazing.
So the Hudson Bay Company was very interesting to me, even though I have nobody who was who worked for them. But this is what they did. This is what they did with the beaver pelts. They sent them back to England and Scotland to be made into top hats for gentlemen. That's what that whole economy was about. So, yeah, I could have done that one. Sorry.
Yeah, the best show and tell I've ever seen, and you didn't show or tell it.
Oh, I got so much stuff. You just don't know where to start. I don't even know what I have anymore.
I have nothing. We came over from Scotland with $300 and a trunk. My whole family, 14 of us. So, and we became Canadians immediately. Thank goodness.
Well, you at least know your connections to the old country.
Yeah.
And unlike well, Steve and myself, I mean, what are we, 8, 9, 10 generations Canadian? You know, so the story has been basically lost from where they came from in Ireland. So,
Ireland's my problem. Northern Ireland.
mine too. Mine too. Yeah,
All of
Steve's
us.
got his fingers up too.
I have to
Anybody
tell
else
you
with an
folks-
Irish problem?
Yeah, I facilitate the members network of the Toronto branch. We just get together and talk, and anyone's welcome anytime, and it's a big chunk of people. And we say every time, put up your hand if you've got any Irish, and 2/3 of the people put up their hands, and the other third are German. So.
See, this is it with Canada. I think the second ethnicity for most Canadians behind English is Irish or Scottish. You know, I probably is equal.
Yeah. Oh,
Trailed by
Scotland.
Welsh.
Sorry, I forgot
Trailed-
Scotland when I said that. I should have. I just took it for granted that everybody's Scottish or wants to be Scottish. So,
Of course. Anne, you've had your hand up for a while. Sorry.
sorry, Anne.
Well, that's okay. I said stuff earlier. So two things. First of all, since everybody was telling about the Manvers area, so Dan my husband has relatives that, as well as DeLongs, he has Grahams, and one of his DeLong people married into the Follis family and had 15 children in the Pontypool area. So there might be some Follises that are related. That's, and that's right.
Yeah.
And
My
Hendersons as well.
Yeah. My Ingram's married into Follises.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to ask Bob if it's true that he collects postcards and if he likes postmarks and things like that.
Yes, I'm a member of the Toronto Postcard Club as well.
So do
I knew it.
you collect postmarks that aren't on postcards?
I've never really did that.
Oh, okay.
It's mainly the images I go, and it's been local ones. A local postcard would be interesting, and like having it franked by like some of these small post offices. I've never thought of that, but that would actually be an interesting.
Well, the reason that I asked is because today when I was cleaning up, I was trying to clean up, and I have a big batch of family stuff, and there's a box on top that isn't really about my family, but some years ago I had a business where I was selling computer software, and it was before the internet, so I was getting all kinds of mail from all over Ontario, and I, being a pack rat, I cut the postmarks off all the letters and threw them in a box. So if there is anybody that you know of that likes to collect Ontario postmarks, maybe they'd find some of them interesting.
Not offhand, like to me, it would be like a tie to where some of my family lived, like a Burkton postmark or a Piney Pool or something like that.
Yeah. And
Okay,
Bob,
that's all.
Bob, while I got you, there's a question here from Bob Halfyard. Will you enlarge on the story about Long Sioux Hill?
Okay, it was my Alex Thompson, I believe his name was, my direct ancestor. He was quite, I'm looking up his dates if I can do it quickly while we're talking, but he was driving a wagon down the Long Sioux Hill and it got away from him. He was quite an age at the time. Let's see, he was aged 77 years, 2 months. So born about 1814, died 1891. He's in the McRae Cemetery. He was driving a wagon down the Long Sioux Hill when his horse was frightened and ran out of control. He was thrown from the wagon and killed. That's basically what I know, not a lot, but he's my third great grandfather.
Okay.
Does that help?
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't even know if Bob Halfyard is still here.
Yeah, I don't see him.
No.
Okay.
Oh, well, you
He
answered
got
his
thrown from the
question.
horse too. Hopefully not.
Well, maybe Steve.
I was just going to add to Bob's thing. If you want to possibly find out more, check the indexes on the Trent University Archives website for the coroner's inquests and things like that. They have indexes for, I believe Manvers Township would be part of that. I think Durham County's there. And there's some of those are quite interesting, and you might be able to get a hold of the records that they compiled on the accident, because they probably had to do something. It wasn't a natural death.
Yeah. Well, I know they were.
Check that. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim.
They will send it to you. I've got one from 1857 from Manvers for, like what was mentioned before, John Gray. So they will send you the transcript, and the index is exactly how I found it, Steve. It was through that you're able to get a hold of those records. So there has to be an inquest into the body of, or by the judicial side of things in the province or the district at the time.
Yeah, but they're filed by year and by surname, so you should have no problem finding it if there was one.
Yeah, well, thank you.
There you go. There you go. I'm this is great. We've had a wonderful chat. We did last year too, so I'm enjoying this. But I think we have to cut it off now. We're just a little bit over 2 hours, and I'm sure Kim would be very glad to close things down for us. I'm just going to go back to my share screen. I've got the program set until June, and I just want to share the topics with you.
I want to say Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
It's Barb Garrow. Can I ask Heather to respond to my message?
Okay.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I didn't see it in chat.
Yeah.
Maybe you could ask me. Can you ask me, Barb?
Oh, you can't. Okay. I don't want to interrupt. I'd like you to email me, or if I could email you.
Absolutely. Nancy, I don't know how you could give me either of my email addresses. That I'm happy to. I would love to chat with you.
I'll send you I'll send the email addresses of each other to each other by
Thank
email.
you.
I just put it in the message to you. If you look, you can't see the messages, right? The
Yeah,
chat.
I can. I just, yeah, let me, I don't know why I can't wave, but I can't see the messages. So.
Okay.
So my email address is in my message.
Oh,
perfect. Okay. So our upcoming meetings, I've already told you about January on migration. February, we're going to have a talk from the archivist for the Anglican Diocese of Toronto, finding your ancestors in that archives. March, we've got a social historian, Forged in the Flames of War, Captive Ancestors of North America. And this is in the time period of the French and Indian Wars. Many settlers, colonists in the States were captured and brought up and sold in or indentured in Quebec. So it's going to be quite interesting, I believe. April, we're going to have Cheryl Latouze, who is a favorite local speaker of ours, and she's doing some online resources review. Bob Dawes, another favorite, is back.
yes,
Scotland from Abroad, the next level. He did Scotland from Abroad about 2 years ago for us, and he says there's enough new stuff to do a whole new lecture, so that's going to be fun. And then Mags Galden will be back in June doing GEDmatch for us, our DNA topic for the year. So I believe that, oops. And that's our information if anybody wants to get in contact with us. So I want to thank everybody. This was great. And we had some really interesting stories and a lot of good conversation. And that's it for our social.
Thanks very much, Nancy. That was great. Yeah.
A small group, but
night, everybody.
very interactive. And I thank everybody for your participation. Merry Christmas, everybody.
You too.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, there it is.